and what projects have you been working on?
Okay. Well, we're still, I think, reeling from the recession. Other parts of the economy might be bouncing back, but the boat industry is still pretty tough. We've maintained a steady flow of work, but we've diversified into some Coast Guard and military stuff that we never used to do. I'd say 4 years ago we had never done any kind of a Navy or commercial project, and now it's about a third of what we do. We're launching a new venture with a guy for both. It's probably the closest to being a personal project for me of anything that I've ever done. So that's really rewarding right now.
Well, can you let me in on it, or?
Well, we're not really ready to say too much, but it's kind of a lightweight trawler, and it's I think a surprise for a lot of people that associate us with high-speed boats to be doing something that'll be a 15 to 20 knot boat. And I think most people would be surprised to know that actually gets me really excited. But it's much more of a boat that appeals to my personal way of how I think people use boats. I think boats are often designed around an idea of what people want, as opposed to the experience telling them, okay, now that I'm in a bigger boat, this is what I really want. And so this boat's really appealing to me, that it doesn't try to do too much.
Yeah. Now, we did a question and answer segment a couple of years ago. I think you mentioned this project. It was a trawler that went a displacement. It was a displacement trawler that gave off this tiny wake and it was completely, economical.
Well, what's funny is, it's similar. What's funny is that during a kind of a lull 3 or 4 years ago, I started designing a boat that I would like to build for myself, and I named it Adele, and it was a ULDB, ultralight displacement boat, narrow, very light displacement, very minimum accommodations, kind of like a sailor's interior. Mm-hmm. And then what happened was, about a year or more, we had a client approach us, started to describe the boat that they wanted to do, and as we began to draw it up, it was kind of taking on some strange proportions, and they didn't like it and I didn't like it. And then they came back and said, why don't you tell us what you would do? And we kind of slid it more towards the boat that I was drawing for myself, and it really developed a fresh look to it, and that's where we're going now.
You mentioned your boat. Tell the viewers a little bit about it. We know it's a Bertram. What's the size? What's the power? How do you use it here in Sarasota?
Well, it's a 1971 25-foot Bertram that I completely customized 20 years ago, and then 2 years ago we redid it again. So it's under my ownership, it's gone through 2 complete renovations. And it's set up like a pickup truck, where the whole stern of the boat is completely wide open. And but we've used it for everything from water skiing to tubing to one time I took a 15-foot boat trailer down in it. But it's just been sort of the all-around family boat. And my kids now are at an age where they're like, okay, you don't get to sell this. We've had it our whole lives, so it's in the family for good. I had a 502 Mercruiser in it with a Mercury drive. It now has a Mercury drive with a Volvo 454 in it, I think. And what's amazing is the 454 runs the same speed that the old 502 did. So more efficient, newer engine, getting the same speed out of it.
Before we go further, though, we should tell everyone about the dog that's sort of under the table here, because that's why we're jostling about. Why don't we just say hello? Let him say hello.
Come on, Scott.
And then we'll just...
Come on, then we'll get rid of you. Come on, Scott.
We're going to just move the...
Come on, buddy.
Okay, there he is.
There you are. Scupper's on video.
There's the back of him.
Anyway. Around, buddy. Well, the race boats are interesting because when I first opened my office in 1981, almost everything that I did was based on race boats. I actually had a little shop where we were building them. But as time went on, we found that we weren't getting any work other than that. And so I got very frustrated that I was so closely associated with race boats that I wasn't getting any other opportunities.
Yeah.
And now we fast forward to where we are today, and I run into a lot of people who have no idea that we ever did any race boats.
How much of a role do the advancements in propulsion, most recently the pods, the joysticks, making boating and docking easier, does that play a role in your design process?
Well, basically, every time somebody comes up with an innovative propulsion system, it gives us a lot more work. Because what you'll have is a lot of manufacturers will come back and want to update their product to incorporate the new drive systems. And so for us, it's always an opportunity. It's always more sort of tools in the tool bag. We like the pods. I've been very supportive of them. I think it's sort of, you live a long time with conventional drive systems, and as soon as you see a solution like that, it's like, why would you go back? And so our attitude is sort of, if there was a pod for every size and speed that we need, we would always go to that as our first solution. And we would get away from conventional shafting as much as possible. The only drawback is sometimes the weight of the system or the cost of the system. Mm-hmm. But we're waiting for that gap to fill in. And there's still a gap there isn't a good solution for a number of sizes of boats, because with sort of small boats you're okay, and very big boats you're okay, but then there's a size range in between where you have to go into triple and quad installations, which I still don't think is very acceptable for the market.
So what size boats and type of boats do you think are most geared toward receiving the pod propulsion packages?
Well, right now you can do a pretty good pod installation from about, say, 35 feet through 55 feet. Then you start getting into the triple and quad installations. The new ZF system will handle boats in the 60 and 70 foot range, but there's actually very few of those out at this point, so we're a little reluctant to do a big series based on them. Once you get above about 70 feet, you have to get into some, what I think are some pretty convoluted combinations of quads that I don't think is very acceptable for the market. When you get real large, you start getting into ship-type systems where you can do as large as you want. But there's definitely a gap above 70 feet.
And we're not just talking about pods. I mean, the whole joystick movement has gone way beyond the pod itself, and has incorporated now even outboards and certainly stern drives, and the whole joystick movement. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, in some ways, it's very disappointing for me, because I think a lot of us that grew up with boats and that are really proud of being able to spin a single engine boat around and back it down through a narrow channel with cross current and know how to do all that, took a lot of pride in the fact that we knew how to really handle boats. When they first started coming out with all the different joystick systems, I was like, man, that really just means anybody can run it. And I realized that's the industry's goal. Well, it kind of goes counter to me, where it's nice to actually be able to know how to do it without it. But it's to attract people that would be uncomfortable in a boat, or a boat of a certain size, without that kind of a system. I think it makes a person feel a lot more secure that if they didn't grow up with that kind of a background, that they could handle a 50 or 60 foot boat without having a big crew or a captain.
What, as a seasoned mariner, would you recommend that even though people can, operate a boat with a joystick, they should still learn the basic skills and seamanship skills?
Well, I would, but at the same time, I'm not sure that that's very practical.
Yeah.
By the way, I've always thought that was why the sailboat market was so much smaller than the powerboat market, because as a novice, you can go get a powerboat and learn to drive it fairly efficient. You have some proficiency in how you handle it. Yeah. But a sailboat is just an embarrassing thing if you didn't grow up sailing. Yeah. So who wants to own a 40-foot sailboat and not know how to do anything with it?
Yeah, exactly. Peters.
Well, from my point of view, most boat buyers are looking for the wrong thing. It reminds me of people here in Sarasota that build huge houses with 5 bedrooms, hoping that the grandkids will come join them for a few times a year. And I think people look for boats that have too many cabins, sleep too many people, cut up too much, and I think that it comes from not having a lot of experience with a boat as to how you would actually use it if you had it. And so it's always a bit of a frustration to see how much individuals want to pack into a boat or a boat company wants to be able to promote, whereas sometimes the best boat has a lot less in it. It's funny, this weekend we took our neighbors out in my old Bertram, and the first thing everybody always says is, "I've just never been in a boat like this." And I said, "Well, I call it a pickup truck, and because there's no seats in it except for the one central helm seat." And everybody's like, but it's so nice to be on that boat. And I said, that's because you're enjoying the fact that it's open, that you can do anything you want in it, sit anywhere you want, you can bring chairs aboard if that's what you want. But I think most modern boats try to anticipate where everybody might want to sit, might want to lay down, might want to do something. And the fact is, just open deck space sometimes the nicest thing you can have.
Boat builders have been telling me that people continue to want more creature comforts, more technology. What about the technology? The the iPods and the sharing of information, the integration. That seems to be where we're going. Do you think that's the case? And if so,
it's definitely where we're going. I don't relate to it at all. I personally don't carry a cell phone. I don't even wear a watch, and I can't understand why when people go out on a boat, they want to be bothered with all that stuff.
Yeah.
I know it's reality, and we have to plan for it all, but it's something that I don't personally relate to at all.
Right. So you're old school.
I'm old school.
How can boaters use the boat show to their benefit?
Well, I mean, the one thing I do think that you get is that when you go on a boat by itself, it's often very impressive. But when you go on boat after boat, you really start to see the quality difference. That if you looked at a boat that you were really happy with by itself, as soon as you look at its competition next to it, you get a much better, current comparison that your mind can't carry if it was like a week apart. But because these are minutes apart, you really understand the difference.
I have to ask you now, what's your least favorite part of a boat show?
Well, the worst thing that a client can ask me to do is to go through the electronics section. And I patiently try to do it once in a while, but basically walking the aisles and looking at the newest gadgets for electronics is real challenging for me. I've had a hard time understanding why people are so fascinated with their GPS chart rather than just looking out the window and enjoying where they're going.